like to congratulate Dale and Kelly Love, our Farm Focus Family Award winner of the year, Kim and Todd Kincaid with Kincaid Equipment Manufacturing, our 2020 Agribusiness Award winner, and Paul Foster, Ken's Pizza, our Small Business Award winner. So congratulations to all of you. Next, we have a great treat this morning for you. As we started thinking about what would be a good way to honor the story of what happens in our Reno County ag producers, businesses, and small business farms, as well as just kind of telling the story about what's happening in agribusiness across the state. We thought it would really be compelling to tell a story about a new business that has launched, a nonprofit that has launched this year to serve the needs of all Kansas farmers. And so I thought of Rick McNary. Rick is the founder of Shop Kansas Farms. Hopefully you've heard of it on Facebook. It launched as a Facebook group on April 28th of this year, and as a result of the pandemic, in response to the lack of the ability to get food sometimes in our grocery stores, and just all of the pressures that were being put on the food system because of the pandemic. So with the intent to connect his friends with wonderful farms and ranchers across Kansas so they could buy their meat, dairy, vegetable, and other food items direct from the people who grow it, they launched Shop Kansas Farms, and it quickly, within 8 weeks, grew to more than 140,000 members. So I think, needless to say, Rick is an innovator. He has a career in community leadership, working to solve hunger around the world. He's also an author of some books, and he and his wife live in Butler County, Kansas, and they have 5 children and 6 grandchildren. And they don't live too far from the family farm that my mom was raised on in Butler County. So we spoke about that when I first visited with Rick. So with that, help me welcome Rick McNary.
Good morning. Having a difficult time unmuting myself, so here I am. So on April 28th, my wife and I were watching a Hallmark movie and had just finished a great dinner of beef we had purchased from a young farm and ranch couple in Anthony, Kansas, KCK Farms. And my wife mentioned that she'd been at the grocery store that day and the meat counter was empty. And I thought, that's odd that we just finished this dinner of great beef and I knew the KCK Farms had plenty more. So how could we connect my friends, our friends, with people like Katie and Craig? So I started Shop Kansas Farms as a Facebook group. I didn't know much about what Facebook groups were like, but I knew that if you made it public, people could join, that you didn't have to invite. But that night at 6:58, I launched it and put a few of my friends and invited them to be members. I checked back with it at 10 o'clock. There were already 400 members, and 24 hours later, there were 5,000 members. And I liken it to being a little kid walking along a dam and seeing something poking out and wondering, I wonder what this is, and pulling a plug, and suddenly this tidal wave, the dam crashes, and I get washed down the river with this flood of chaos and tumult. And I had a couple of people rescue me who became admins for me. One of them is Megan Kramer, the Director of Communications for Kansas Farm Bureau. And another one's a social media guru that I've known for a number of years, Olivia Fletcher. So there are 8 different volunteer moderators and admins that help me moderate this page. So let's go to the next one. So this is what the Facebook group looks like. If you did on Facebook, there are pages and there are groups. This is a Facebook group. We also have a page, but the group where it has the most interaction. So you see it's currently over 145,000 members. Most of those came within just the first few weeks. We knew it would plateau, and watching all of it transpire has been an incredibly fascinating journey. And here are some of the things that we learned. Next slide, please. One is that Kansas farmers calm public fears. I love the hashtag still farming. So what happened was there was a a new fear as people went to the grocery stores and bought up all of the toilet paper and the meat and everything else that they possibly could. When I've worked in the hunger space, really, or working on international and domestic hunger programs, relief and development for the last 20 years, and it's called food security or food insecurity. This was a new type of food insecurity. Typically, when people go hungry, it's because they don't have money to buy food. However, for the first time, really, in my experience of 60 years in America, people who had money couldn't find it. They'd go to the grocery store. There was a new level of food insecurity. And with Maslow's hierarchy of need, hunger, and of course, food is one of the primary ones. And so people were frightened. And I love it that Kansas farmers calmed public fears. In fact, AgriPulse, the magazine out of DC, I wrote an op-ed for them. Sarah Wyatt has been following this very closely, and that was the title of the op-ed, Kansas Farmers Calm Public Fears. It was like the people were afraid, saying, who's going to feed us? And Kansas farmers were like, we're here. We've been doing it all along. We might be a mile or two down the road. I love it that my heroes, people in agriculture, were able to shine and calm the fears of public. Next slide, please. So what happened is that there's actually a local and regional food system being built. Now, because of my work in hunger relief and development programs, relief is the give a man a fish, development is the teach a man to fish, and you have to do both, is that local food systems are really critical. I was visiting years ago with Kirk Kastner, who was the director of food science at K-State at the time, before he retired, and about the vulnerability of our food supply chain, especially at the time he was talking in context of terrorism type of threats. We didn't realize a pandemic would show the vulnerability of that. And so truly 10 years ago, I began trying to research and understand what does it take in the production, processing, and distribution to really build a local food system. So as Shop Kansas, and one of the things that I saw all along was there needed to be a digital hub that connected. Most food systems are kind of a top-down thing. It's an agency or it's a nonprofit that's driving and trying to get farmers to reach out to the consumers. What happened with Shop Kansas Farms is that suddenly consumers were looking. And if you looked at we don't know exactly the metrics, we can't tell, but I would guess that of those 145,000 people that are in our members, 144,000 of those are consumers. And that type of grassroots, from the bottom up type of food system. So as I watch it took off, I realized this is exactly what I've seen has been needed. I didn't start it with that intent. I was still like that little kid that pulled the plug out of the dam. Next slide, please. Here's something really fun, and I'll show you some numbers later. Rural revitalization is taking place with the new economy. As people are learning to make money with their products and doing it in a rural area, of course, broadband and cell strength is key to all of that. Actually, the lieutenant governor with his rural prosperity reached out to me to talk about how Shop Kansas Farm. And so I had some folks join that call. And one of the things that a producer from Emporia, a delightful young lady, Jacqueline Leffler, who's taking over the family farm, said she has to drive, 2 miles away to get a decent cell phone reception. So broadband and internet are key to this. But there's one story in particular of people in a small area, Southeast Kansas. I stopped by to see their operation, operating basically kind of out of their home in a rural area. And they showed me their numbers. A year ago, she was working at a job with 2 degrees, but the best job she could find paid $12 an hour to be able to stay close. Her sales this year on their product is over $250,000. And I'll show you some numbers later. We're trying to do some deep dive into understanding the economic impact. I'm hearing, I was part of listening to the Kansas Rural Center town halls, and one of the people in their preparation mentioned that their business had grown over 500% because of Shop Kansas Farms. Again, it's brought a whole new level of consumers. Next slide, please. And I love it that a local and regional community is being built around agriculture. You know, 4 years ago, I was at an FFA conference. It was the first time I'd ever been to a convention. I served in the time on a group in DC called the Alliance to Hunger, and the FFA was a part of that. And their government relations director asked me if I'd ever been to a FFA convention, and I said no. And I thought he was going to pound on me for a little bit, like how could you not be at that? And so I grew up in rural Kansas, but I'm not a farmer. I'm going to get that straight out there really quick. I do not have the courage, the faith, nor the intelligence to be a farmer. But I went to that convention, and I often say I met 65,000 of my new heroes that I think those brilliant, bright, beautiful, blue jacketed young people, we ought to just go ahead and turn the world over to tomorrow, if not sooner. But I kept hearing them say, we need to tell our story better. And so on my way back, driving back from Louisville, I called up Steve Backus, who was the transitioning out president of KFB at the time, and Terry Holdren and Rich Feltz, and said, can I write as an outsider looking in? I'm a writer. I'd love to write stories about farm families as the outsider. And so I began writing. And what I've discovered is that the agricultural community understands community like no one else does. You get it. And that's what our world needs. And to me, the solution to hunger is always around community. It has to be in the context of community. And I love it. And especially if you look at the Shop Kansas Farm and the Facebook group, and you see there's a community there, people talking to one another, and it's built around agriculture. And I love that. And if I can shine a light, I often say when I speak to farm groups, I want to be your biggest cheerleader. I promise I won't bring pom-poms, and nobody wants to see me do a cartwheel. I'd end up either on a YouTube video or in the hospital, but I'll grab any kind of a microphone or pen and ink that I can and shout out about the incredibly wonderful 2% of America that are actually feeding the other 98%. Next slide, please. There's a lot of education happening. As people, for the first time, myself included, we bought our first quarter of beef. Never have done that before. Now, when I was a kid, my dad always butchered in the winter. We'd get a steer, we'd get a hog. I never paid a lick of attention, so I didn't know how to do any of that. I really wish I would have. But as consumers are talking to farmers and asking, what does hanging weight mean? What do you mean by process? What do you mean on the hoof? And so farmers, and in fact, Megan Kramer says that she spent 14 years in trying to help consumers and farmers talk to each other, and it's happening just naturally on this. And the education that's taking place as farmers learn to speak a language that consumers understand. For example, one of the first conversations was about boxed beef. A farmer put on, well, you're going to pay this for boxed beef, but yet on the hoof, it's this. And somebody said, so what's boxed beef? So it gave the farmer an opportunity to explain. So the farmers are also learning consumer languages. The education that's taking place is really quite fascinating. Next slide, please. And people want to shop local. We've had a few people from, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Colorado, and Nebraska want to jump on and advertise their stuff. And we've had some pretty strong resistance from people in the state saying, let them start their own thing. We want to buy local. We want to support Kansas farmers. And I love that people want to shop local. That ties back into this regional food system. There is a sense of security of knowing my food's only 3 miles down the road, instead of having to expect some big supply chain to bring it in. Next slide, please. This is a movement. These are the states that have picked up our model. They've reached out to us and said, can we borrow what you're doing? And we said, yeah, sure, go ahead. Take our stuff, everything we've written, all of our rules, everything else, and make it your own. Because our purpose at the core of what we do is to prosper farmers. And we know the best way we can prosper farmers from our standpoint is to build a direct consumer pipeline. bringing the consumer to the farmer instead of trying to get the farmer to the consumer. Next slide, please. Here is something really important. If any of you are on this and listening in that are involved in agribusiness or in farms and ranches, please understand this is a new platform of communication for you, and use it. Even if you're commodity farmers and you don't have anything to sell directly to the consumer, please think of Shop Kansas Farm as your platform. I want to shine a light on you as you explain how all of this works. As I started interviewing farmers for the Kansas Living magazine, part of Kansas Farm Bureau, one of the things I kept hearing was, well, they tell us to keep telling our story, but at the end of the day, I'm too tired. Or who do I talk to? I don't talk to anybody. I'm on the tractor. I go to church. I go to school. They all know the same story. This is a new communication platform for farming, and I love it that they're able to get their message out there. Next slide, please. For us, it's been hard to stay focused on the purpose. Part of what we've had to continue going back to is why we started. It was to connect consumers to the wonderful farm and ranch families of Kansas so you can buy your food directly from them. Right out of the chute, we started getting all kinds of political posts starting to say, well, I raise crops and cattle and animals this way, and the other person does it that way, and they do it terribly, and they're wrong. And we got quickly into where we started moderating all of that and saying, don't be critical. This isn't about being able to prove with scientific research how your way is better than the other person's way. That's not why we're here. We're here to say there's room for both. We're also not going to let any political comments. And boy, that has been really tough this year. Surprisingly, one of the places that people get the nastiest is with pricing. If a rancher especially puts out a price out there of what their beef goes for, or a hog producer, or really anybody, it's just ridiculous how the trolls, the internet trolls looking to stir up stuff, will just start bashing. And we have a 1 strike rule. And so when you sign up to be a part of Facebook group, you have to agree to certain rules. And one of those is don't be critical, be civil, be kind, don't be nasty. If you don't like somebody's price, walk on by. That's what you do when you're in the grocery store. And surprisingly enough, we've had to use that 1 strike rule quite a bit, tossing people out. It's like, no, this is not a place you're going to be nasty. And so we've really it's been hard for us to stay focused on purpose, because as you can imagine, when anybody with any kind of an entrepreneurial sense at all looks at 145,000 people they can advertise to, they want to offer everything under the sun for sale. But we've stayed on, it has to be food that you can eat. Next slide, please. Will this continue after the COVID-19 crisis? Yes, absolutely. Because for a variety of reasons, but the most important one is the power of storytelling. So corporations, nonprofits spend billions of dollars trying to craft the story, craft the narrative around their product. There's 140-some thousand stories out there. As people are finding their farmers, they're going to them. Some of the stories are just so heartwarming. People will take a picture of a cup of coffee and say, this coffee used to be really bland. Then I went to this dairy, I met the cows, I got to feed the bucket calves, and I bought some milk from the dairy, and it's the best coffee I've ever had. That type of relationship, because truly people buy from people, and building that connection between farmers and consumers. But I've also had farmers say, I'm not used to the public showing up here. We don't know what to do with this. So part of what we're going to do is help them really with an agritourism component. Next slide, please. What does the future look like? Well, we found a variety of gaps. One is people wanted a searchable directory with a map. You can't do that on Facebook. So, and you can't sell live animals. Facebook will shut you down faster than I'll get. And at the time, when people were, and still, they're like, the packing plants are backed up, the local processors are backed up. What are we going to do with these live animals? And they can't sell them. Now you can. So we've created, actually, my wife and I started not a nonprofit, but we started an LLC. Shop Kansas Farms. And if you know anybody that wants to list their farm, it doesn't matter if you sell commodities or it's something direct to consumers. We want people to be able to find you. It's free. You can jump on the website, shopkansasfarm.com, and register your farm. Next slide, please. So that's what our map looked like a couple of weeks ago. It's more populated now. I think we have 270 some businesses listed. You can see it's a searchable type of thing. You can find it by region. You can see Northwest Kansas, Southwest Kansas are lacking. If you know anybody in that area, please have them sign up. Next slide, please. So we just last week, we were, Sarah Wyant with AgriPulse got a hold of me and said, do you have any idea of the economic impact? It's like, no, just anecdotal. So we put this out. This as when 7 days responses, these are the increase in sales. 90% said, yes, they had. If you'll see down there, 23% said they had a 300% increase. 23% said they had a 50% increase. And I like it that even a few people said they had over a 300 and 400% increase. Of course, some were flat, but not very many. There's some great stories that go along with that. Next slide, please. So what do we do next? Well, I want to build on this concept of a local and regional food system. When you think about production, processing, and distribution, that's what it all takes. Next slide, please. And so over the course of time, the website will be a digital hub for regional food systems. So in the producers to be able to list all of the equipment, supplies, technology, research and extension, and regulations. Under the processing, who are all the meat processors, under the distribution. And so all of these things will be able to be listed on our website. So it's going to be a pretty robust website. Part of the demand right off the back was we want a searchable directory and a map. Well, we couldn't do that easily with Facebook. And so as I started researching doing a website, I knew that if we had 145,000 people show up on the Facebook group, and we knew that kind of traffic would eventually be on a website, we had to do it right. I've learned from farmers to take your time, prepare the ground well. And so we've spent a lot of time laying the groundwork and building a robust background and database to all of this. Next slide, please. So one of the things on the horizon is an expo/trade show. We don't know what to call it, but we know there are a lot of people very interested. We sent out a little survey and had about 2,000 responses almost immediately. And here's what we want to do. We want farmer and rancher led workshops for agribusiness entrepreneurs. One of the things that I see happening, and I hear Kansas Farm Bureau talk about, is that, and it was mentioned earlier when the Love family was mentioned, the fourth generation. I learned quickly in talking to farmers, they self-identify within the first minute or two what part of a succession they are in, their first generation, second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever. What I've also learned is each generation has had to adapt, and farmers are the best entrepreneurs out there. And so some of the commodities that the farm doesn't die on their watch during their generation are looking to these direct to consumer sales, saying, as one farmer told me, I've ran the numbers, money off of 5 head of cows and cattle than I could off of 50 if I do this right. Whether that's true or not, but he ran the numbers and talked with one of the producers who was doing the direct to consumer. It's not an either or, it's a both and. It's a new opportunity for farms to find a public, to communicate to them, and to dispel some of the myths that are out there about what farming is, and to be able to sell directly to them. So also consumers want to have workshops at this expo and trade show on how to buy from farms and ranches. The added value, how do you take this and make that and make it sellable? Marketing and sales. I've discovered that there's a great opportunity for farmers and ranchers to learn more about how to market their product, how to sell their product. For example, one guy that had some hogs he wanted to sell took some pictures of hogs laying in a pen covered with mud, and he's like, I have this, I want to sell these, the pork chops are going to come off of this. And I emailed him back and said, you know, that might not be the best picture that you could use to, if you want to sell, you know, your hams and pork chops and things, that might not be the best picture. Do you have anything you've put on the grill? So he fired up his grill, took some pictures of that. I said, now you're going to get a lot better response that way. So it's been kind of fun to help them think about how to reach consumers. That's one of the things I'm hearing from farmers. We've never had people to the farm before, never had them buy direct. We need help. Thank you for this, allowing me to make this presentation. I'm open for any kind of questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Rick. So we have a chat feature open, and we encourage you to post your questions in there. We'll start with the first one from Katie Fallon with Jackson Meat. She asked, can a retail market that sells local farm products list on the website?
Please. Yes. We would encourage anyone that is selling any product that is raised and purchased from farmers in Kansas and ranchers. Yes, by all means.
Perfect. And Tasha Hickert said she sees it as a great way for farmers to try a new crop or product on a small scale and have a way to take that to market. That's absolutely correct, Tasha. I think that some of the things that you pointed out in your top 10 list, Rick, are phenomenal. And I see this pandemic has a few silver linings. And I guess the silver lining is that we're solving a food desert that has existed out there for a while. We are helping people understand where their food actually comes from, which I know has been a dilemma of agribusiness for a long time. And it's also shown light on the fact that we have some internet deserts out there, and many of those are getting solved because we need kids learning online and delivering internet to the farms. And so that's bound to help improve the economic situation out there for people to make this possible. So I'm happy about that. Shanna Henry is on, and she asks, what kind of regulations have to be followed for this platform, Rick?
One of the moderators is with the Kansas Farm Bureau and is closely connected with KDA. And so on our Facebook group, we put the information out there for people to, both the sellers and the buyers. From the group standpoint, we put out a caveat emptor. You know, we're all admins, we're all volunteers that are running the Facebook side. We don't have time to be regulators, but we're telling people, you know, check them out. Ask them questions. And if you are a seller of something, put your license number up there so we can add validity to that. We've had some stuff we've had to deal with. We had a scam artist jump on and take some people's money and had to get a lot of in fact, went up to the attorney general level, you know, to get him involved in it. And turns to find out the guy's already under investigation for scamming others. So people are getting their money back. We've had to intervene. But as far as regulations on the Facebook group, it is a caveat emptor. Now on the website, they have to sign a little thing saying they follow the laws of the Kansas Department of Agriculture to be able to be listed.
That could be a dilemma. Do you have some recommendations when people are listing their products of what are the best forms to accept payment, and vice versa, if you're a buyer on the platform, how to verify that these are actually verified producers?
You bet. Currently, we don't. We do encourage them to use our credit cards simply because they can go back and contest it. We encourage them not to send checks and especially not to give cash. And we don't even like them to use PayPal and Venmo because both of those can be challenged by the end business. There's a real scam going around now where people will send you money through PayPal and buy a car off of you, a used car. They tried it on me. They'll come pick up the car and then they'll make a complaint to PayPal and get all their money back. And then I'm out of a car. So we don't even encourage that. We encourage use of credit cards, trusted credit cards, so they won't do that. However, part of our next step for our website, I didn't put that out there because it's a big step, is we're going to provide an e-commerce platform for farmers and ranchers because they're asking it of us. Can we can we put our stuff up on your website, have a landing page, or we don't have time to, or the investment for an e-commerce and a website. We trust you. Can you do that? So that's our next step. I'm working with some business development folks as well to create a place where farmers can put their stuff up on us through our e-commerce, trusted, verified system. They can do the transactions. Another thing that we're telling, we want the website has a ratings and review component for each of the businesses. And so as businesses, and this will start next week, as they offer their stuff on our Facebook group, we will say, this is a 5-star verified, go read all these reviews. So that's part of what we're doing to help mitigate that and monitor that in the future.
Very good. A couple of comments. Russ Reiner with our Chamber Ambassadors compliments you with great presentation, Rick.
Thank you.
Irvin Schlatter with our Agribusiness Committee as well compliments you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Like you have a new follower because Vicki Shank said she just joined Shop. So I would encourage all of you to as well get on Shop Kansas Farms. I think just like our H-Bucks program, this is a way to recirculate dollars within our Kansas economy and keep those dollars right here flowing back to agribusiness. So thank you, Rick, for being our speaker today. I have just a few closing remarks for everyone, besides thanking ProValue Insurance again for being the sponsor of this digital platform today. Again, want to congratulate Ken's Pizza on our Small Business Award and Dell and Kelly Love for Farm Focus Family Award Winner of the Year. And then I needed to correct myself. Kincaid Equipment Manufacturing as our Agribusiness Award winner, and that is Kim Kincaid Warner and Todd Warner. So I left the Warner off earlier. Sorry, guys. Just a couple of reminders. We still have the Shop Local giveaway happening through November and December. So on our website, there's a way to submit your shopping receipts online. And every week, then you will be entered for drawings. We have a Monday drawing for H-Bucks. So watch for that every Monday on our social media platform. And today's a busy day for our Zoom account because we are having a lunchtime lowdown at 12:30. And today our featured speaker is Janice Richardson with Selwyn Marketing, and she's going to talk to us about overcoming the fear of going virtual. So I know we all have a little virtual fear sometimes. These platforms are intimidating, so she'll give us some good tips on how we can make it even better. And then I would just like to remind you, our next First Friday Coffee again is virtual, and the sponsor will be AgTrax. And that will be happening the morning of December 4th. So we encourage you to join us for that. And just one reminder, kind of marking your calendar, a save the date. We have set our annual meeting date for 2021, and that will be May 6th. So we're pushing it back a little bit to try to get past this pandemic we're in the midst of, and hopefully we can gather once again then. So anyway, I would like to just thank all of you again for coming this morning, joining us on this virtual platform. If you see an ag producer, thank them for everything they do for our local economy. And if you see one of those FFA kids around in their blue jackets, definitely, as Rick said, they are definitely our next generation of heroes, and we need to encourage them to continue in this tradition. So thank you, everyone, and we will hopefully see you at First Friday Coffee or maybe one of these virtual platforms for Lunchtime Lowdown. Have a great day.